Christ, a television ministry of the Lutheran Church of Peace in Platteville, Wisconsin. Here's your host, Reverend Jeff Pedersen.
Well, today our topic is on appearing. Now, I don't know if you're like me. I know we're all different. And so sometimes I just think, well, everybody's like me as far as their thinking. But I'm one who has studied philosophy. But I guess you don't need to study philosophy to be into this. And that it has to do with existentialism. Our existence. We exist in this world. There was a philosopher by the name of Descartes that said, I think, therefore I am. In other words, I exist. And how does he come to that conclusion? It's by the fact that he can think. Because after all, what is reality? I can be living my day today, but last night I had dreams. And in my dreams, that seemed like reality. Or you think about somebody who loses an arm. Let's say an arm is amputated. That even though the arm is gone, that the person still feels the arm. It's like a phantom arm. And so what is reality? When the arm is here, or when you can still feel the arm when it's not here? And so what Descartes came up with was whether I'm in a dream state or in an awakened state, in whatever reality is, that I'm thinking. And the fact that in either state, now which state really is reality and which one isn't, is that in those states I am thinking. And as long as you can think, you exist. I think, therefore I am. And so when we get to the point where we say, well, boy, I actually exist, and I can even prove that I exist, but then we have to ask the question, but where does my origin stem from? How did existence come to be? And here again, I don't know if you're like me, but it's like, an onion where you got all these layers of the onion and you can peel off all these layers to where you finally get to the very core of the onion. Okay, here is the core of the onion. And so that's a lot of times what the philosopher is looking for, or somebody with a philosophical mind, is that they are looking for, I want to get right down to the core. Just peeling off, a few layers here is not going to be good enough. Because I've seen in some cases where people just peel off a few layers and they're content. No, I want to get right down to the core. And I'll use that as an example. Like you, when I was a student, I went through school and I took all these different subjects. I even studied some biology in high school and also in college. And so I'm just kind of like this person that has all these questions. And so I will have questions for my teacher and I'll have questions for my professor. Because here again, I don't claim to be the expert, but yet, and it's not like I'm just wanting to say, well, I got to combat this understanding. I've got to combat this theory. No, I'm willing to believe theories as long as, as long as they can be, in a sense, shown to me, not even necessarily always proven, by some strong evidence or some strong reasoning. That's all I'm asking. And so the teacher will say, well, it all started with a big bang. That all of this big mass of materials together, and all of a sudden it exploded, and then it just kind of penetrated off into the universe in this great expanse where, all of a sudden solar systems and galaxies are all being formed, and it continues to move out. Well, what's so wrong about that? But still, the question that I have to ask is, okay, so is that what you're saying is the core of the onion here? Yeah. Now, one of the things that I enjoy model railroading. I enjoy learning about railroad history. And I even like to take rides on the Amtrak train. And I've taken rides on the Amtrak train from the Midwest all the way out to California. And on the way out to California, I've gone through the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada mountains. And one of the things in studying the history that I can appreciate are all the tunnels that were made through the mountains in order for the railroad tracks to go through. Matter of fact, there's the Moffat Tunnel that is 6.1 miles long. It takes 10 minutes to get through there. But in order for those tunnels to be, there had to be lots of explosions to be able to get to break up the rock and to get it out of there. And so they used nitroglycerin and dynamite. But somebody had to put that in there. It wasn't like all of a sudden, wow, there was this explosion, and all of a sudden the rocks broke up, and now these workers come along and take the rocks out. No, somebody planted that in there. So when you think about the Big Bang, you got this big mass of material, and you got this Big Bang. Well, who put that there? Who caused this big explosion? And so as I asked the teacher doesn't know or can't go beyond that. It's just like, well, it seems to me like we got more layers of the onion to peel off before we get to the core as far as answering that question of existence. And then when I was in college, I went to a fine college that had a very fine biology department. In fact, lots of doctors have studied there as far as their undergraduate studies before going on to medical school. And so as I'm in there studying biology, I'm learning that, well, we evolved. Somewhere along the line that these cells started dividing. Well, and so then still I have to ask the question, well, who started that? Who put the first cells out there? And how could life continue unless that there's a beautiful or a nurturing environment that would allow those cells to not just be, in a sense, to die almost immediately, that there had to have been some kind of a life support system there for the cells. But then, I'm not going to get into all of that, but that we evolved from apes. Well, okay, I guess as I look at an ape, there's some similarities between an ape and humanity, in that we got 5 fingers, or 5 fingers on each hand, 10 fingers in all, and that we have a head, and that we have legs, and that we would be mammals. And so somehow, when you look at it, what could we have evolved from? Well, I think that, for humanity to evolve from a centipede, that would be quite a stretch. Or humanity evolved from a turtle, well, I guess you got to use your creative imagination. And you really have to use your creative imagination to believe that we evolved from an ape. But as you learn about humanity, you got the ape here, and you got humans as they are here today, that you have lots of emanations of humanity, of humans, to go from an ape to who we are today over the course of hundreds of millions of years. But my whole question is that why has this ape survived then, especially when part of this theory is the survival of the fittest, that then the weaker species will die as the stronger species comes. That the ape still survives, but all these species of humanity that apparently have been before we could be, where are they? I don't see any evidence of it. I mean, if the ape is surviving, then all of these different species of humanity should still be existing today. And so it's just all these questions that I'd have for the professor. Here again, I'm just the snotty-nosed student in the back row asking the students, or asking the question, and I would be asking these questions in a kind way. I wasn't here to try to, I wasn't trying to show up my professor. I just have questions, saying that I'm willing to believe this if you can convince me of it. And so as far as anatomy goes, well, of all the creatures, we look most like an ape or a monkey of all the other animals. But then when we studied physiology, the physiology of our human body, that we are the closest to a pig. That's why they use pig valves, in human hearts, because we're the closest to a pig. Now here again, if you were to go to my office and look at my desk, you'd probably say, well, now I can believe it, because my desk doesn't always look too tidy. But that was a question that I had. Well, if we are physiologically closest to a pig, well, then how did we evolve from apes? And then also, well, that our this human organism, or this organism that eventually has become human, that somehow within itself, it somehow thinks that it needs eyes to see. Well, how would we know that we need eyes to see if we don't know what that is? And my whole question with eyesight then would be, over the course of hundreds of millions of years, why isn't there an evolved eye? Why hasn't humanity evolved an eye in the back of its head? Because especially in primitive times with humanity, when you think of predators that are stalking you, that having an eye in the back of the head is very helpful. All of these questions, or that obviously it's been a desire of humanity for a long time to be able to fly. But as I look at people, I don't see that there's any semblance of feathers growing on anybody's arms, and by now that would be happening. Or to be able to swim like a whale. That you'd start seeing, some kind of a semblance of a fin, like a dorsal fin or something like that. And I'm not seeing that. Because here again, to be able to sail on the sea or to be swimming like a whale is something that is a desire for us as humans. I mean, we've got submarines, we've got ships, we've got airplanes. And that by now we should have evolved to be able to run as fast as a car or like an animal like a cheetah, and to have the endurance of a camel. That we should have developed that now over the course of hundreds of millions of years. But I don't see anybody running that fast for that long. And so for me, if the theory of evolution is true, that all of this would be happening right now. And I'm not seeing it. And as I ask these questions of the professor, who apparently is the expert, and here again, I'm coming with my basic elementary questions. I mean, these are kindergartner questions. And the professor is not able to answer the question. And so I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, how am I supposed to believe this then? It's like this theory breaks down immediately. But yet this is what's being taught. We don't evolve as humans, we invent as humans. We want to fly, so we invent a plane. We want to swim like a whale, so we invent a submarine. We want to be able to run as fast as a cheetah, and we want to be able to go the distance of a camel, and so we invent automobiles. Because we have the inability to evolve, we invent. That's what it comes down to. What humanity has not been able to do over the course of hundreds of millions of years, that finally we just give up. And so you get people who use their God-given procreativeness to invent and to make these things. Okay, well, a lot of you are probably saying, okay, big shot. Well, do you got any better answers for us? Well, I must say that I'm a little bit like the biology professor. Because I oftentimes have people with all of their questions. And like the biology professor and myself, that we are trying to answer questions that are far beyond what our human mind can even begin to comprehend. I mean, we're dealing about creation that is so massive that it may be infinite. I mean, we are one planet in a solar system, and we are one solar system in the midst of a lot of solar systems that make up a galaxy, and we are one galaxy that is probably one out of millions, if not billions, of galaxies. And if there's something beyond that, all these millions and billions of galaxies that all come together to form something else that I'm sure that, maybe there's some name for it. And so here I am, and here we are, trying to figure out, existence. Where does it all come from? How do we see God? How do we know God? How do we find that core to the onion? And so when people refer to creation, that's implying that there is a creator. And so if you don't believe that there is, for instance, God or a creator, then you've got to call creation something else. Because now it's not a creation anymore. And as we look at creation, this is far more intricate, far more complex than anything that we have in that humanity's ever come up with. Now here again, I have a toolbox, and I'm able to fix things to a degree, like my vehicles and my snowmobiles. And doing handiwork around the house, there's a level of which I can fix things. And whenever I'm able to fix things, I always go, oh, good. I was able to fix it. That saves me a lot of money. But yet there comes a point where there's something wrong with the automobile, or there's something wrong with the house, where I do not have the ability to be able to fix it. And so that's where I call upon, somebody who's a professional in the field who is able to fix it, and sometimes even that professional to say, this is beyond fixing. You're going to have to go out and get a new one. And so what am I saying by this? Is that creation is so much more complex than the most technical, the most intricate complexity of anything that humanity has ever been able to create. But yet to keep it going or to fix it takes quite an intelligence to do that. And so as I work around the house or work with my vehicles, when I realize that this is beyond my ability, then I call on somebody who's got more ability in this area. And so as I look at just the things that humanity has created and how it gets to the point where this is beyond me, well, creation is far greater of an intelligent design than anything that we've ever come across. And so that's where we have to look at, is there a God? An infinite God that's always been, that always will be, with such an intelligence to be able to create this creation. Here again, is there any evidence? Is there any good common reasoning that would suggest that? Or it's just like Pastor Jeff, we've given up on fairy tales. Well, I'll tell you what, creation isn't a fairy tale, it's a reality. It exists, just as you exist, and it has come from somewhere. And not only is this creation just greater than any clockwork that's ever been invented, but whoever the creator is has got some artistic ability or has an appreciation for art. Now here again, I've got, once again, a novice appreciation for art. I can go into an art museum and I can look at art and I can say, wow, that's really beautiful. But somebody who really has a deep understanding of art and appreciation is going to see art in a different way than I see art. They're going to see things about that painting or about that sculpture that I would have never have noticed. But once again, as you look at creation, it's like the art. Like if you look at a painting, everything about that painting is going to reflect something about the painter. In other words, everything about this creation of the painting is going to reflect something about the artist who is the creator. And so that's when you look at creation, that everything is a signature of the creator. I mean, as you look at the sunset at night, you have to say, it's a little different every night, but that's the signature of the creator. As you hear the wind blowing through a pine forest, there's something about that. Or the rush of fresh water coming down off of a mountain and cascading down to the earth. I mean, it's all just so amazing. And so everything about creation reflects something about the Creator. And that for me, that as I study creation, I mean, as I've studied the Bible, I've come to where I see the core. And the core in the origin of creation and of our lives comes from God. But to be able to see God is just like, well, where do we see God? Is God driving around in a certain kind of a car? Can we go to the ball game and say, oh yeah, I saw God sitting up in that section in row 5 in seat G? Or that God appeared as a statue, or God appeared as an angel, or God appeared like some fairy godmother like on The Wizard of Oz. How are we looking for God? And that's maybe part of our frustration. I know that God has created a beautiful creation, but where is God? When we read the scriptures and we hear things like God will never leave us and God will never forsake us, that He will be with us always until the end of the age, and I can preach this, and I have preached this. But how about in the event when a youth is killed in a car accident? Did you go to the youth's parents and say, oh, God is always with us, and that God will never forsake us? And after all, Pastor, that's what you preach. Come on, big shot. What are you going to say now? Well, here again, we look at the Word of God. The Word of God is so amazing, and it was all put together. I mean, it was written by human hands, but it's all an inspiration of the Holy Spirit. I mean, we're living in a day and age of computers and word processors, an age of information. I remember when I was in college, if I wanted to learn about something and have a thesis and write a paper, I'd have to go to the library, go to the card catalog, find the subject, and hopefully I can find some good sources about that. And sometimes that was always questionable. But now we got our iPhones, we got our computers. I can Google search things. I can go on these search engines, and I can find all the information about a subject that I want. And now with our iPhones, we can ask any kind of a question. We can go to a lake and ask, how deep is this lake? And it'll give us the answer. But even in this day and age, that this day and age with all of our technology, that we should be able to disprove the Bible almost immediately, but we can't. Because even though the Bible was written long before even typewriters, before telephones, or any kind of mass communication, that this Bible is the Bible is put together greater than anything that is just laid, that has come out. And so I read from the Bible, from Psalm 22, verses 1 to 2, where we read, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from the words of my groaning. Oh my God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, and am not silent. These are the words that Jesus quoted from the cross as he was dying on the cross. He says, God, why have you forsaken me? God, why are you not even here? I'm praying to you, and you are silent. because we are living in a fallen humanity, where we're going to try to figure out different ways to try to explain God because we want to be God. We've taken God's place. We don't want God anywhere around until something bad happens and we blame God. You know, we're the ones who ate the forbidden fruit in the wilderness or in paradise. We're the ones who have chosen to say, God, we don't want you to be part of our lives. We can explain things through our various scientific theories that don't hold up. But we're happy with that because at least it all belongs to us now. We're no longer the steward, we are the owner. But when something bad happens, then God's the villain. God is the one who has done this. It's like God is, like we come and say, we are perfect humanity. Oh, we've done nothing wrong. And so, but something bad has happened. So, it's God's fault. It's as if God has eaten the apple. Well, certainly as a pastor, I'm not going to go up to these people, to this family and say, well, God will never leave you or forsake you or that he's always with us. I'll probably be reading Psalm 22, 1-2, because even though he hasn't forsaken us and even though he's always with us, that in this moment, that's what it feels like. It's terrible. As it was terrible for Jesus, but Jesus died on the cross for us and is arisen from the dead so that we may have life in him. That he reveals himself and he makes himself known to us. That even in the midst of the depth of our sorrow and in our pain, that he's always with us. And so I read 1 John chapter 1, verses 1-4, that the very creator of this universe has become one of us and has died on a cross for us and is arisen from the dead, and that we can come to know him. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen from our eyes, which we have looked at, our hands have touched. This we proclaim concerning the word of life. The life appeared. We have seen it and testified to it, and we proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and has appeared to us. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you also may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with the Son, Jesus Christ. We write this to make our joy complete. That God has become one of us. God has revealed himself. He's unveiled himself. But now we wait for his final appearing.
You have been watching To Know Christ with Reverend Jeff Pedersen, pastor of the Lutheran Church of Peace in Platteville, Wisconsin. For a donation of $15 or more, you can receive a copy of Pastor Pedersen's latest book, Christmas Ponderings. Thank you for watching, and tune in again next week for To Know Christ.